Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. As always, with me in the studio is the magnificent Eric Morin. Every time I say that, it needs to be like music in the background.
Reese, we need like pump up music or something. Like,
I'm working on my intro voices as we become into speaking season, trying to nail that down. I'm excited about today's podcast. I think.
Inflation hit an all-time high yesterday for the first time, like the highest in 40 years. So,
it's going great.
So speaking of building the flight midair,
it's going great.
This is what happens when a president's on the job training.
Yes, this is a little bit of a crazy time, I would say the least. So we got to prepare for it, to say the least.
The housing market's crazy. These things. Look, this is crazy time. But what do we want to talk today about? Some scalability things, and I think this idea of building the plane in flight is that it's understanding that I think that most organizations expect perfection, right? I think that there's like this idea that organizations are perfect from the very beginning, right? And that there's never a mistake, and they don't ever lose anybody, and nothing ever goes wrong, and that and that's just not true. And I think it's important to understand that when businesses scale, and I don't care whether you go back and look at Facebook and Amazon, or if you want to go look at a dental office or a DSO, look, these are things that happen, and I think that it's understanding that sometimes we're building the plane in flight.
Yeah.
And that it's okay to sometimes be building the plane in flight. And because I think what ends up happening is people want perfection, right? Mm-hmm. And I won't build until there are not any problems. And, it's like, I had someone tell me that not too long ago. It's so funny, Matthew. They said, I would love to be a business owner if I didn't have any clients or employees to deal with. I was like, well, go be a banker. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
yeah,
I don't even know where banking came in. Go do something else. I don't know what it is you would do where you don't have to deal with any people, because that's not the thing. But this idea of perfection, I think, and scaling is probably a misnomer, is that I'm going to be perfect or I'm not going to make mistakes or we can't grow. Now, we've got to make sure things are in place. We got to know who's in charge and who makes decisions. And those are key important things. And we have to have the day-to-day operations taken care of. I think one of the biggest places people miss is day-to-day operations, right? Who takes control of things during expansion, and who makes exceptions on things. And what ends up happening is the doctor's like, I got it. Well, you can't experience hyper-growth if the founder or business owner is spending all their time on day-to-day ops. Like, there's no way. So you've got to have day-to-day operations. You've got to have somebody managing your day-to-day operations. So it doesn't have to be perfect. This plane does not have to be perfect, but you have to make sure that someone's managing your day-to-day operations so that you can control those types of things.
Yeah.
I start thinking about, when we start thinking about growing a company, there's some limiting factors, right? So there's certain growth limiting factors, right? Do I have the right resources, right? Do I have the right resources? Do I have enough money? I think, one of the things that people don't realize, I was talking to a CEO of a large DSO, oral surgery DSO recently, and it was like, I was looking at all the people they were hiring. Well, they were hiring all these people because they had enough money to do it, right? They're private equity backed. And if you're private equity backed, it's pretty easy to be able to hire those people. And sometimes people are buying cone beams and they're buying all this equipment and they're buying all this stuff, but they don't want to invest in the people. And it's interesting, we see DSOs do something completely opposite, which is they buy people first. And I tell people, look, if you're building a DSO, one of the first things you would probably do is go hire people.
Yeah.
right? And so I'm watching on LinkedIn every day and I told him I saw this, like every day they're hiring new people. Well, of course, because they're going to build the team to go build out the company, right? They're going to get the resources and put it together to build out this company. So I find that interesting. So do you have enough money to build out the team? Not the team of today. See, I think we're too busy managing today. I think it's what does tomorrow look like, and do I have the team to do that? So do I have the right infrastructure for that team? Do I have the right people, right? Do I have the right people who can get me there? I think sometimes that companies are dealing with the people that they have, and the problem is there's a relationship there, and they like that person. Maybe the person's been there for a period of time.
Yeah.
But the problem is that ultimately they know it's not the right person. And in fact, they've known it's the wrong person for a long time. And if they were to start this company again tomorrow, they wouldn't hire that person.
Yeah.
And by the way, some of you are listening going, that's me. I've got Susie, and Susie I would not hire again tomorrow. I think one of the things that they say, and sometimes I've heard said, is if you wouldn't enthusiastically hire this person tomorrow, they're the wrong fit. And if you go back in your company and say, would I enthusiastically hire this person tomorrow? Like, Matthew, I love working with you, buddy. Like, you're right. I mean,
we have a good time.
Right? If I was going to start a new venture tomorrow, the first phone call I would make is my boy Matthew. Be like, hey man, let's go do something, right? So
we know what we're doing at this point.
So it's like, do you have the right people? Would you enthusiastically hire everyone on your team? Because when we go back and look at this and say, look, I need, I need to have controls, and so there's challenges in scaling. But if you don't have the right resources, you don't have the right money, you don't have the right infrastructure, you don't have the right people.
Yeah.
The question is, how do you get all this done?
Yeah. And I feel like there's like two great examples of that. One of them is, we always use a sports analogy. When a sports team gets started, what are the first people they hire? They hire the team, like the staff. They go hire the head coach, and then he goes and hires offense coordinator, defense coordinator. He starts building that out. The GM comes in place and starts putting all these pieces together. They don't go out and just start getting players without knowing what the infrastructure looks like. And the second example is, I can always use like Atlanta or in Austin. So Austin grew exponentially, but the issue with Austin, Texas is they didn't have the infrastructure in place. So anyone that knows that's ever driven from, like, say, Dallas to Austin, Texas, or San Antonio up to Austin, Texas, it is a madhouse when it comes to traffic. It's a disaster. It shouldn't take but maybe a couple hours, and it takes 3.5, just because they didn't have the infrastructure in place to deal with the demand. And I think in businesses, you deal with that all the time. And you can see that's one of the biggest inhibitors of growth, is the fact that you don't have the infrastructure to be able to do it. And I feel like it's a constant battle. And, we do at Tower Leadership, we're trying to figure out, all right, we grow, this is how we scale. How do we scale with a predictable model? That way it's not so much pressure on a leadership team that you look at each other and you're like, oh, what did we just do?
Well, I think that when we think through this idea of scale, and going back to that again, is like, and having the right people. I was thinking about this when you were talking, is that what if you have the linebacker, and actually let's even, how about an offensive lineman? Even better, right? Because I think, like, offensive linemen, people don't realize, most people even that watch football don't realize that offensive linemen are some of the highest paid people in the NFL. They don't realize that. People think it's always the quarterbacks. Offensive linemen get paid bukus. Why? Because you got to protect that quarterback that you spent so much money on, and so offensive linemen get paid a lot. Well, what if you have the wrong offensive lineman, and the person's, they're doing some blocking and tackling, but they keep getting to the quarterback, and that offensive lineman isn't the right person, and yet you keep them. And imagine your quarterback, you keep getting just sacked, and you're just like, well, I just don't want to upset our linemen, we don't, he's been here for a while. And can you imagine an NFL team being like, well, Joe's been here for a while and he's a good guy, and I know our quarterback keeps getting sacked, but I don't want to have to deal with hiring a different offensive lineman. I don't want to, deal with the headache of that. And it's like,
or we're paying that person a lot, So it's like, oh, we're paying Susie up front a lot of money. And if, that means she's doing a lot of stuff. Therefore, like we just can't lose her. Same thing with offensive linemen there. It's just, the center. Well, okay, we're paying them a lot, but they're letting the quarterback get sacked.
So the question is, do you have the right offensive lineman? And so what happens is, one of the things I draw out in a diagram, and I've drawn this, I'm making up stuff now. I've drawn this out.
I've drawn it out.
I've drawn it out. I have actually in a pretty presentation this whole idea of what happens is, when you build an organization, we have organizational ceilings. And a ceiling is basically saying, based on those things I just said, resources, money, infrastructure, people, right? We hit ceilings, right, in our organization. Like, I can only grow so much if I don't have enough money for marketing. I can only grow so much if I have enough people to see patients. I can only grow so much if I don't have the capacity. I can only grow so much if I don't have the chairs. I can only grow, right? So we can do acquisitions, which will help us bring in some resources possibly, right? But what ends up happening is we hit ceilings. Now, going back to your linemen, the problem is that if you do not continue to grow the organization, see, that's why I say the reason why they say that when organizations aren't growing, they're dying. There's a reason by that. And I don't think everyone ever gets the specific of that, right? They always just go, well, if it's not growing, you're dying. And you're like, what? Well, how does that even make sense? Like, I don't even understand that. So let me explain that a little bit further in our lineman conversation. So what happens is that if a grump company does not grow, in all companies, to get them where they want to be, they have to have ambitious people, right? People that are driven and want to do awesome things and want to grow and want to be the best of the best lineman you got, right? But let's just say the coach walks in and says, I don't care about the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I don't care about a championship. I don't care about winning the division. I don't care about those things. We're a good football team. We're just going to status quo. Well, the players on that team who wanted to win the Super Bowl, who want to win the division, who want the ring, baby, they're gone. They're going to leave because they're just like, look, man, I want to go get a ring. So they're leaving. The problem is now all you got left is your second string.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't grow, you're going to lose your top talent. But here's what ends up happening when you do grow. Let's just say that you're going to championship caliber. So if you're the last place, let's just go to the last place in the division. Well, then what ends up happening is you could probably get away with some of the linemen you have and some of the people you have. But as you start growing that, in a sense, increasing the ceiling of what you're able to do, the people that are there, the linemen that are there, the teammates go, well, I have to grow. That means I'd have to come in early for practice. That means I would have to learn new drills. That means I'd have to work hard. That means I'd have to do twice as much because they just brought on this new guy, and the new guy is competing for my position. And if I don't step up my game, then I will then have to compete for this position. So they go. So then all of a sudden what happens is they just go, well, it's the coach's fault, it's this person's fault, and what ends up happening is they leave the organization. But what ends up happening is you have to understand, as you grow your ceiling, as you grow the ability to grow your organization, that's going to end up happening. And so I draw this out to say that as you're building this thing in flight, you've got to have the right people. And if you go to increase, and I think it's important for dental offices to hear this, because as they go to increase, they're going to lose some key people.
Yeah. And I think that to jump in on that one, because my brain is like turning at this point. When people call in, I think it's funny because we're trying to explain to them why this is happening in their own practice. I would argue that probably 9 out of the 10 listeners right now that are listening into this podcast at one point were a part of an organization before they started their business. And the reason they got out of that business is because the business did not want to grow anymore. They were stagnant. They were stale. They didn't want to take their ideas, their ambitions to grow the practice and accomplish all these amazing things. So they started their own business. Yeah. And then they ultimately got to a point where they became the person they were trying to avoid. Yeah. And they stopped growing. And if you just think about that concept for 1 second, you say, all right, well, when I was younger, I wanted to be that huge giant conglomerate, and now I'm like, I just want to make sure that I get through the day. So at what point did you lose the passion to be able to do that? And we stress raising the ceiling. Well, that's exactly what you did when you started a dental practice or you started a medical practice, is you wanted to raise your own organizational ceiling.
Good point. Well, what a great point. That was like some stone cold, like just hard thoughts, right? Those are deep thoughts by Matthew Maffei.
It was like coming to me. I was like, yeah, I mean, this is ironic in a way.
Look, I mean, ambitious people want to grow. Ambitious people want to do well. What a great point. Is sometimes people say, well, how do I keep an associate? I don't know, have a growing organization where they can thrive within the organization. How about that? How about having an organization where that they have the potential to thrive and have the potential to grow and have the potential to implement and have the potential to do those types of things? And we've talked about that on this podcast before, but people want to be part of something great. People always ask me before, did I have to have my own company? And I've said to people before, no, I really didn't have to have my own company. I don't know that was, I am entrepreneurial by nature, but I also know that the headaches that come with a company and I like not having to deal with all this stuff and just making really good money. But what happened is that when the organization's not growing and it's not pushing the boundaries and it's not getting better, then I know that I can't grow within the organization. And so then that makes me want to go find a different organization because I'm like, I got to grow. I have to grow. I want to make more money. I want to develop. I want to move. I want challenges. I want to be able to overcome those challenges. It's interesting. The issues that you have in a business are the issues that everyone has in a business, right? They're the same issues. Like this is the part of scaling. And I think doctors, because they're fact finders, struggle sometimes with this concept because it's like, we should be perfect. Or I'm not going to scale until we're perfect. And operational efficiency is perfect. And we have all the right systems and all the right processes and nobody ever quits and everyone's happy and everything's good luck. That's never going to happen because as soon as you implement a new process, then you're going to have that happen again. And so part of this is to say, and I want you to write these down. These are growth limitations. Do I have the right resources? Write that down. I want you to write this down. Make this podcast an opportunity. Now, if you're driving, don't write it down.
Don't write it down.
Take a screenshot of the time on the podcast. Go back and when you're in front of it, piece of pen, paper. Do I have the right resources? Do I have enough money? If I don't, where am I going to get it from? What resources maybe do I need? Do I have the right infrastructure to build this out? Do I have the right people? I think the problem with people sometimes is that it sounds hard to say. The best thing you can do for an organization is to help it grow. And at the time, sometimes that's hard because one of the challenges that I face or that doctors face that I hear most often is like, Susie's been with me for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Can't I make Susie someone she's not?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is no. No. Susie would have already been the person that, see, the thing is if somebody is an office manager after 35 years, they were probably never driven to grow much more. The truth is that some people can grow, but the question, people always try to take somebody and push them into a spot and say, well, just can't they grow?
Yeah.
They sometimes, but oftentimes, this is why when private equity takes over, venture capital takes over, like when it's the same thing. Like let's look at you were talking about Uber before this podcast started. They replaced the CEO because they were like, this guy's not. Now he was doing some goofy stuff, but the truth is he wasn't able to manage the company in the future. And so what happens is oftentimes when private equity takes over a DSO, they put their management in place. Now what they don't do is go, well, Pete's not capable of running a $150 million organization, but let's see if he can over a period of the next 10 years. No, they put the people that they know can do it. Now, I'm not saying you don't have somebody who can help you get to the next level. But they have to be willing to grow. They have to be willing to invest. They have to be willing to come in early. They have to be willing to stay late. They gotta want it with everything they got. They gotta be sending emails out at 8 o'clock at night. They gotta be putting in processes, procedures, and standards, and all of those things. If you have an office manager and you have an accounts receivable problem, not the right person.
Yeah.
If you start to look at this and go, well, we have no KPIs. Look, the drive to have KPIs is a drive for somebody who's focused on process and says, look, we got to process. So
yeah.
So the question is, like, you got to think about those, because I think it's.
I would say if the low level things are bogging you down, you probably have the wrong person. Yeah, such as cancellations. Like, we hear it all the time. Oh, just cancellations are a big problem in my practice right now. Well, why are you dealing with that? Like, honestly.
Or not dealing with it, right?
Yeah.
Because you go, well, I'm not supposed to be dealing with this, but it's not being done. I mean, when we look at that, it's such a good point. It's like, look, like, I had never been in a dental office in my life. I did not want to be in a dental office. I married a dentist. I got brought into a dental office. Well, like, it wasn't rocket science. And people say, well, Eric, yeah, but you're more talented than the average front desk person. That might be true. But I mean, it was pretty easy to see. Like, well, we haven't filed claims for a month. I'm like, well, you push a button at the end of the day. It batches your claims. I don't understand. What do you mean you haven't filed a claim in 30 days? And the way I've seen that, and I'm talking about 3, 4, 5 million organizations that will come back and say they haven't sent out a claim in 30 days. And in the AR or cancellations, it's not hard. Look, somebody goes to cancel. You look at the calendar, you go, what the hell happened to our schedule? What fell apart? Who the hell's supposed to be fixing it? Susie gives you all the reasons why she hasn't been able to fix it. Susie's the wrong person. Because it was very easy to me. Like, there's a few things I could see right away. I get paid more for out-of-network people. I liked that. And cancellations would destroy the schedule.
Yeah. So
cancellations would go something like this. Let me go back into my my zone here. Someone would call and cancel, and I would have no problem telling somebody, this is what I would say. You guys can write this down, whatever. This is free, okay? This is what I would say. I would just simply say to them, hey, Jim, I appreciate you letting us know that Susie's sick and those types of things. Can I ask you a question? Have you ever waited more than 10 minutes in our office to see a doctor? No. Well, the reason why we do that is we don't double book. And we don't double book because we set aside a time just for you. The problem is that during that time, if you don't show up, I have to pay a hygienist to ultimately sit around and do nothing. And so what ends up happening is, as a small business, you can imagine that if that was happening 5, 6, 7 times a day, I would be out of business. And so what we do is we ask you to show up for your appointment. And so, yes, we do implement and we do fully hold, accountable the cancellation fee. So, and if I was going to waive it, I would say I will waive it this time, but I can't waive it again because it just costs. And you'll be the great people, the really great people will go, you know what, you're right. I should come in. I'll make it work. Yeah. They will. And then what ends up happening is the people that don't, or the out-of-network thing, where you just simply tell somebody, like, look, do you know the difference between in and out-of-network? Do not lie to people and tell them, we accept all insurances when you're out-of-network. Don't lie to people. You can communicate the difference between in and out-of-network, and you can communicate. And we teach this. Now, that I'm not giving for free. But But I will tell you this much. I had a doctor one time take me to play golf, and he said, hey, man, can I get your language? He said, what is your out-of-network acceptance rate? I said, 94.2%. And he was like, what? I said, yeah, I'm damn good at the out-of-network phone calls. I know how to convert them. Because I knew that person paid me a lot more, sometimes 3 times as much as somebody who was in a plan. And so I do think that we as organizations, if you're having those problems, this isn't about phoning language. It's about the fact of, if you're having these problems, you probably don't have the right lineman or the tackle or whatever, right?
Yeah. And you need to figure out how to either train them. Like, if you're having that issue and the person hasn't come up to you and said, hey, I'm struggling with this concept. Is there any like training I can do? If they're not asking for help, like you said, they should always be trying to invest in themselves, and they're not asking for help, then you know you have an issue. Like if it's still a lingering issue and they haven't brought it up to you and said, hey, how do I fix this? You probably have the wrong person.
So I think that it's okay.
Yeah.
Just so everyone knows, it's okay to go back and say, just a few things for you to think about. It's okay to say, do I have the right people? Do I have the right people on the bus? Do I have the right resources, right? Do I have the right capital? Do I have the right infrastructure, right? It's okay to look at those things. It's okay to challenge the team to come up to standard. It's okay to push that, but if you're, and it's okay to build the plane in flight. Like it's okay. It's okay. We've all had those challenges, but it's a challenge of scaling. And we know that, look, one of the things you can do to help with this process of scaling is to hire outside management for certain functions. That's why sometimes you hire a consulting firm, is because you're looking to help with outside management functions, right? You have to look at the tension that sometimes happens. We've all had employees that were there from the very beginning, and then we have the new hygienist that walks in the door. There's tension, and you got to be able to manage these things, and we got to balance short and long-term decisions, and we have a lot of movements we have to make within a business, right? We got to remember the early stage business might be different than a large organization, because it was the early stage business was flying without controls, procedures, and all these things, but later on we come back and put those in place. And we have to understand that there's a process of scaling, that there's a management of scaling. I'm not talking about managing people, I'm talking about managing scaling. And scaling, the management of scaling is in its own right an art form. And so learning how to manage scaling is an art form. And the question for you today on today's podcast is, do you know how to manage scaling? Or do you have someone in the organization who knows how to manage scaling? And if you don't, then what do you do about it? Because how does Tower Leadership grow our clients so fast? We manage the process of scaling. We don't just work on soft skills, how to pick up the phone, which is important, how to greet somebody, have a good experience. All those things are important. Don't get me wrong. Soft skills are important. But how you grow an organization is not soft skills. How you grow an organization and really blow it off the top, how you do that is you learn the process of scaling. You understand resources, you understand marketing, you understand how to put the right pieces in place, you understand how to get capital, you understand infrastructure. By doing that, and if you don't have someone, you need to have someone at least give you the oversight on it, and then you need to learn how to modify your own business decisions, or put someone in place that can do that. So the question for you, and I'll shut up because I know you're chomping at the bit to say something, Matthew. I'm going to say this one thing. I'm pumped up this morning so go back to that again. Does Susie know how to manage resources? Does she know how to manage money? Does she know how to manage infrastructure? Does she know how to get the right people? Does she know how to build the right processes? Does she know how to manage capital? Can she do all those things? And she probably cannot manage scaling. She can probably manage management of people.
Yep.
But management of people and management of scaling are not the same.
Two different things. And I think this is one of my favorite podcasts just because we're dealing with that issue significantly right now. As people are looking to scale and grow, I think one of the statistics you've used is by 2025, the mom and pop shops were probably going to be irrelevant at this point because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to multi-location. So I think it's the perfect concept. Always share it with a friend. This is why we do the podcast, is for you guys to share this information with other people that you think may need it. So go ahead, subscribe as always. Thank you for being in the studio today, Mr. Morin, and we'll see you guys next week.
See you guys next time.